You guys are all right?
Yeah.
That is?
Welcome everyone. Congratulations for the class. Now we have KYUEM A and opposition to Permata A, homosexuality from individual, right? Everything you said. So, Mr. whenever you're ready.
Mr. Speaker, let me just start the debate by clarifying a few things. This debate is not about forcing anyone or forcing athletes out of the closet or out of being a closeted homosexual. This debate is about what is the best or what is the most moral inclined choice which represents the best interest in society and to reduce oppression of minorities all over the field. And then we think that athletes have a powerful outreach. We think that given that there's something wrong in society where homosexuals are still being oppressed, they're not being given equal rights, where they're not being given equal job opportunities, we think that these individuals have to be right. And we think that athletes especially have the inherent responsibility to do whatever that's in the best interest of society. And instead of celebrities who individually actually use their influence to help other people, to help our causes. I'll explain that more on my first idea, right? Thus, we see no reason why this shouldn't extend to athletes preaching on homosexuality and coming out and saying that guys, homosexuality is okay, you need to normalize it because it's something that's very natural. So what exactly are we principally okay with? What exactly are we trying to in our case? Basically, we simply support people to come out from the closet and to express themselves freely as homosexuals, especially famous people, especially public figures, and in this debate specifically, we want to talk about athletes, right? Now, I'm going to talk to you about two main ideas. First idea, how these athletes have a social mandate to come up and to help the homosexual society. Now, the second idea, how these athletes actually help to normalize the whole idea of homosexuality in their community. But before that, anyone of you?
Yeah, the politicians in extremely conservative countries have an obligation to reveal their homosexuality, even if it's everywhere.
Okay, we think that the debate isn't just about in extremely conservative societies, right? We think that this debate is a place where, you know, like, okay, yeah, like there are parts of society which are okay with homosexuality, and we still think they are being oppressed. I think it's unfair for you to set this debate in an extremely conservative society in Saudi Arabia, where the moment you come out as a homosexual, you'll be exposed to that, right? So on to my first idea, how these athletes have a social mandate. Now we think that these individuals and figures have attained a very high place in the societal ladder, right? We think that these athletes have a large outreach and a large influence on what people do and the choices that people make in their daily life. Most of them in status quo already do whatever they can to help society and they do all of this willingly. Now, for example, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, right? They go and almost every year they make fundraisers, they help, and they establish their own charities, and then like yeah, she even adopted like a dozen African babies to just show people that, you know, that poverty in Africa is very serious. And then let's talk about Emma Watson, right? How she came out in the US and she spoke about human oppression and she spoke about how feminism is something that's very important and something that needs to be accepted, right? And then let's look at this again. All of these individuals had the option to not talk about subject, had the option to remain impartial from these kind of issues. But why do they do these things? Because they believe that they have a social mandate to change things because of the power and the power and the base of influence that these people are in. We think that they can bring about a larger impact and a larger change to the betterment of society. So we think that these people are actually utilizing the kind of influence that they have, and especially for homosexual athletes, where people of their own sexual orientation, right? Because when you are a homosexual athlete and you see other homosexuals oppressed, we think even more reason to these athletes to help these people because they are of the same sexual orientation of these oppressed people. But then on the second idea, on how these athletes can actually help to normalize homosexuality. But before that, yes, any one of you?
Yeah, I would like to share an example of an athlete that is progressing socially when he is telling everyone that he's LGBT.
There are a few examples in this score. Like right now, just recently, a few months ago, we've seen gay athletes participating in the MLB, in the Major League Baseball in the US. We've seen NFL homosexual players playing in the big playoff side. We think that is an issue. It's just a matter of choice whether these individuals want to come out or not. And we're telling you that all the morally right reasons these individuals should make the decision to come out. So on the second idea, right, how these athletes can help normalize homosexuality. So we understand that athletes are famous individuals and public figures. Right? So these people typically and essentially don't have a very large fan base and they have a large influence of society. And we also understand that there are a lot of people in society who idolize this kind of figures, who idolize this kind of athletes, right? And all over the world. And then when these athletes have also a large fan base in conservative places or in conservative regions in the community, we think, and these people also idolize that athlete, we think that when the fans hear that your favorite athlete is actually gay, we think that this helps to normalize the idea of homosexuality to this kind of part of society. Why so? In various cases as before, I went to see famous actors and famous artists. For example, right, how Neil Patrick Harris came out and told people like, hey, I know I'm a successful actor, but I'm gay. And people actually start to normalize the idea that homosexuality is okay. Because these famous people are actually very powerful in propagating that. And then like when we talk about Ricky Martin, right, when he was a famous singer, when he was at the top of his career, and then when he came out and he said that guys, I'm homosexual, people actually recepted well to him. People actually start to accept him into society, and that also brings about larger change in other societies where people start to normalize the idea and say, hey guys, you know what? Homosexuality is actually something okay. It's actually something that even my favorite singer is a homosexual, and something that we should normalize to, and something that we should inherently accept in society. So basically, on the basis of this debate, what have I told you? I've first spoken to you about how these activists have a social mandate and how these people actually have the inherent responsibility to bring about whatever kind of change that they can in their society. We think that these athletes have to, we think that other celebrities also already do this in the school for other reasons like feminism and whatnot, and we think that there isn't any reason for why these people to extend this to athletes who want to preach about homosexuality. Now, on the second basis, we already talked to you about how these athletes can help to normalize the idea of homosexuality because of the kind of influence, the kind of power that people have, and how they're being idolized as gods and whatnot. And we think that this helps in propagating the word, and this helps to normalize the so-called harms of homosexuality so that people can accept it. So, for all these reasons, I'm very proud to propose. Thank you.
We don't think it's a social mandate. We don't think there's an obligation that exists to any athlete out there. We think that the choice and the option exists for these individuals. But as far as the responsibility goes, side opposition disagrees that any individual out there has a responsibility to the LGBT community. There is no argument that by fiat, just because these individuals are born homosexual, that they have a duty towards the homosexual community. We also think it's a contradiction from side government for them to argue that we will not force these individuals out, but at the same time argue that these are individuals who has a responsibility to come out at the end of the day. Regardless, if they're going to tell us this, that means they have to prove to some extent that individuals who wouldn't have come out anyways are more likely to come out under their paradigm. And the only difference is that they were forced by this policy, Mr. Speaker. So we don't see how their policy will play out. Three arguments today. Firstly, why any individual in society has an obligation to himself before the LGBT community. Secondly, why is this harmful for professional athletes inmate? Why do they have it better for themselves? They keep themselves in the closet. But third, what are the harmful outcomes on a macro basis. Before that, few levels of responses, right? One, he tried to dodge the POI that we pushed towards you, because we told you that if you're a politician in a conservative country, should you then have an obligation to out yourself? The point of this POI, and directly clashes under their own principle, is that no matter who you are, if their underlying principle is that you should out yourself for the sake of a cause that you might not believe in, you have that kind of responsibility. Everything that he didn't have the opportunity to answer this. He just kept saying, you know, it's in Saudi Arabia, it's in another country. So athletes also live in these countries as well, Mr. Speaker. By that logic, he's not fine with these athletes coming out in a conservative country. But second, we don't think that they have an obligation. I'll put that later in my argument. But it's last thing, and the second only thing you talk about normalizing society. No, we don't think that they will normalize society. At best, they will harm their own career and they will harm their own fan base from the inside out. If society is normalized, they haven't proved to us why these specifically are individuals within society who have that obligation. We can do it through other, we can use average individuals in society who have come up through their own option and through their own choice. All the examples that they've given us are individuals who have come out from their own well-being, individuals who have gone through the process of actualization, and they know that they want to help their cause, and they know that they want to help other individuals who are struggling through that fight. All the examples that they've proven to us is counterintuitive to their cause, because other individuals they are forcing to leave won't make the same change. These are individuals who are forced out of the closet. They won't create the same change that people who made the choice will. So, why professional sports athlete or even any average individual has an obligation to him or herself before the LGBT? We allow people to come out of the closet for a reason. Even the LGBT community knows that these individuals are homosexual or transsexual. Individuals or the community themselves know to a large extent that individuals in the closet are still in the closet. But we give them the privacy and the opportunity to come out of the closet on their own, because we think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If these individuals choose to stay in secret for a long time, or they choose to stay in secret for all eternity, we still recognize the privacy that they have, and we still recognize their duty to themselves is before the LGBT community. That's why we don't obviously out every individual who has subscribed to the LGBT community anonymously, because we recognize that they have a priority to themselves and they can make their choice whenever they want to. But second, just because you're homosexual, that does not mean you have an obligation towards the homosexual community. That is why the LGBT community acknowledges that there are gay politicians who are creating policies against the homosexuality, and there are gay individuals in society who are writing against homosexuality. Even if the LGBT community knows this, they don't tell the whole world, because they recognize that you as an average individual have your own ability to make that choice. Just because you're homosexual doesn't mean you don't have the right to oppose homosexuality. Just because you're homosexual, that does not mean you have to subscribe to the LGBT community. That's the argument that we're making. These are athletes who have the opportunity to make a choice in whatever benefit that they want. Even if they think and they believe that it could affect their professional athlete career and they don't want to out themselves in society, we think they should be given that choice, because it's a perfectly legitimate choice, and it's a choice that has been following precedence of the LGBT community. The conclusion to this argument is very simple. You should not out yourself because you have an obligation to the LGBT. Given that you choose that obligation, given you take up the responsibility and you've gone through the process of self-actualizing, we are fine with you promoting the cause of the LGBT community. But insofar as you're forcing people out of the LGBT community, you're forcing individuals who haven't subscribed to this ideology yet, we don't think that this is fair. But second, this is targeted more towards the motion, right? Why is it not in the best interest of the athlete in making this choice? One, there's a reason why athletes do not come out of the closet under large circumstances. Even if you're using examples, they're not athlete-specific examples. And we think athletes differ from most individuals. But because the individuals who control their merit are not society per se. They're specific individuals within the structure of sport. If it's football, it's a referee. If it's basketball, it's a referee. If it's a competition, it's judges. What does this mean? The individuals who adjudicate you for who you are as an athlete are individuals who are specifically appointed. And this is a risk, right? I mean, there are always biasness within circumstances, and there are always individuals who are adjudicated just because they're homosexual. That is why even celebrities come out, because they're the backing of society. But because you're an athlete, you cannot have the backing of society. Your career rests upon your merit, and your merit is determined by individuals within the structure who could be against it. So it's a huge risk for athletes to come out, because they might be blindsided or they might lose their own ability to push forward their career, because there are a lot of haters out there, and these are individuals who will push them down. But second, even at best, by logic, they will lose supporters, because as an ambiguous person, you're more likely to get support for your own ability to play sport than a person who outs himself out, because it's controversial. Meaning, at best, even if people support you, you do lose more supporters. You you do lose individuals who have supported you otherwise, compared to a person who was ambiguous, compared to a person who was known to be heterosexual. Because there's no controversy in that, meaning of an athlete should be able to make the choice because he will gain more supporters, he will keep his own supporters, and that is the obligation he has towards himself. But then your scope of your career is severely limited. You can't go to conservative countries and perform or practice there because these are people who will shun you. Example being the Winter Olympics. Many athletes pulled out of the Winter Olympics because they knew that they could be targeted in the Winter Olympics. They knew that they could have been harmed in the Winter Olympics. They can't go to many countries now. And this is particularly harmful for an athlete because your career, your international professional career relies upon going to many countries. And this is specific for athletes per se. So we think that their career is severely harmed. What are the harmful outcomes coming from outside? One, marriage is diluted because I've proven to you that under a large set of circumstances, biasness will be against them and they can't see this coming. So athletes should have the right to protect themselves and prevent biasness from becoming a factor. But two, less people enroll in sports for being homosexual. This might seem far-fetched, but it happens more likely in conservative countries, which make up a majority of the world. The fact is 52 states in Africa are against homosexuality. Individuals won't want to enroll in sports if that means they lose their privacy towards the world. They also affect the quality of sports because when individuals are less likely to go into sports, that means less individuals with quality will go into sports. So we protect individuals making the choice. We can't force individuals to come out for another obligation that they might not subscribe to.
I think the first half of Kishan's speech was pretty redundant because he wanted to tell you that under their side, he wanted to protect the choice, and under our side, we're limiting this choice and forcing this homosexual to come out of the closet. And he wanted to characterize you situations in which, in conservative countries, it might not be in the best interest of this person. But we're saying, Mr. Speaker, this debate isn't about forcing this individual to come out. This debate is about if this individual chooses to come out, would it be beneficial to society, and would it be with the positive changes of him making this choice individually, not forcing the speaker, would this choice benefit society or harm society? So let's just talk about the things that actually made sense in his speech. Because he said it wouldn't be right for him, and it wouldn't be right for the choice, wouldn't be right for him to come out of the closet because it's not in his best interest, because now his merit will be targeted. Judges or referees will be biased towards bias towards this specific person who altered themselves. We think that these type of problems can be solved within societies. If judges are biased, you can point them out, you can take them out of the body. We think those type of you can fire them from those jobs. We think that you can't. When like professional games are being live streamed online, it's very easy to tell if a red card is given out of no reason. We think those type of check and balances will exist within status quo. We think the idea of judges being biased can be solved. Mr. Speaker, we think it's easily identifiable which if a judge is specifically targeting an individual, we think those type of situations can be mitigated. But we think on the second idea, on how he talked about this in like his last few seconds of his speech, on how these people will lose supporters, therefore they shouldn't make this choice. We think to a certain extent, we do agree the reality that he will lose some supporters. But we think on the flip side, Mr. Speaker, we think there's a difference between famous people like athletes and normal people, because we think these famous people are viewed in a different light. As in, they have large supporters, Mr. Speaker. They have people that have a personal attachment with these people, when they like people who idolize football players, people who idolize celebrities. Therefore, we think that's why it's harmful when certain celebrities do things that are not morally accepted by governments, like drinking, because we think people start to normalize this idea, even though they know it's harmful, they start to normalize this idea. So on the flip side, when an athlete that you've idolized your whole life comes out of the closet, you would be more inclined towards saying, look, I still love him my whole life. Is he actually a different person? Am I actually right towards hating him? We think the comparative, we think on the balance of probability, we think he might not lose as many supporters as you're talking about, but we think on the flip side, people would start to normalize the idea. It might seem weird at first, but I'll talk to you my substantive on how it's beneficial for a famous person to come out of the closet, given that there is sort of a social stigma towards homosexuals. No, thank you, Siddharth. Because he wanted to say that these people don't have an obligation towards the LGBT community, and they don't have to do it. We recognize that, right? They don't have to have an obligation towards the LGBT community, but we say, is it the right choice? Because we think that this choice of choosing to affiliate themselves with the LGBT community, given that they are a positive group in towards helping minorities fight against oppression, we think this choice is a morally right choice. That's what this debate is about. And why is it imperative for homosexual professional athletes to come out and declare support sexuality and support the LGBT community? Because we think when straight people support it isn't as impactful and there isn't a sort of personal attachment of a third party coming up and saying, oh look, let's support this weird group. I don't exactly know how their lives work, but let's just support it. We think there's a much more, if a famous individual who's gay comes out, he can talk about his personal life, how it isn't necessarily different as to how a normal straight person functions. He can talk about how his life was before he was famous, or even after fame, how unfairly society treated him. Because when you think about it, Mr. Speaker, there isn't anything wrong, and this person would be the best person into proving that to society, into saying that and telling society, especially straight people, of things that they're unaware about, and how it's under our side is when you defeat the asymmetry of information that exists within society. Because we think the main reason people feel uncomfortable with homosexuals is because they feel that they're different from people, and they feel like they are sort of alien group. And we think it's our side that changes this perception in a way that they can't. It's our side when these famous people come out, they get media attention, press time to talk about his life, and it's on their side there's a sort of asymmetry of power that exists, which we think is a problem, because of the lack of proper information about homosexuals. And on their side is when they allow normal people to draw their own conclusions and make a sort of a judgment towards people. We think it's on their side that allows bigoted, conservative religious people to be the only people to preach their opinions. It's on their side that you allow people to say that gay people are evil, because we in society, in status quo, you do allow, like, religious sermons who have mass only sort of information that exists on their side, where there's a asymmetry of power. And this when you allow people to be ambiguous about gay people and draw their own conclusions, which are necessarily negative, because that's the only information they got. But before that,
this debate is about what's in the best interest of the athlete. So considering you have considered biases like this, considering you have considered that they will lose supporters, remind us how this will help the athlete go any further in his career.
We're saying that this athlete, the harm that you wanted to pay towards this athlete isn't a harm that you exacerbated the harm. If he faces if he faces unfairness on the field, we can solve that to check and balances. And if he loses a certain number of supporters, we told you that the number of people that would support him would be a higher number of people, because I gave you characterization on how personal links towards famous people is inherently different than a normal person coming out of the closet. But secondly, on this idea on how we can significantly change the lives of ordinary gay people, because we say their side that discourages the celebration of individual sexuality. We're talking about two people here, closeted or people that have already come out. First of all, closeted people, they feel they haven't made the right choice, or they're weird, or they're normal, because that's the only thing they've been told, speaker. And their side reaffirms their insecurities because they have no one to relate to. It's their side that reaffirms the stigma that is unfair towards them. Why is it important for someone to be able to be okay with his sexuality and choose to make the decision to come out of the closet? We think that sexuality does play a role in a person's life, even the athlete. We think you're able to relate to another individual, find a love, a partner, or romantic interest. We think these type of things are important and integral, and we think that love does play a big part in the life that we value speaker. We think also when it comes to people that already come out of the closet and the backlash that they face, at least now they have an individual that they can defend themselves against, that says, hey, look, if this same person came out of the closet, he's a normal person, why are you socially stigmatizing me when there are individuals who are normal and they can at least have a person that they can relate to? We told you that this isn't about forcing the choice, but it's about talking about which choice would be better for society and also to make the world a better place, given that it's unfair under their paradigm.
Yeah.
In a world where the LGBT community haven't gained enough traction for the people and the rest of society to accept them, side government wants us to believe that the athlete's career or a particular athlete's career wouldn't be harmed by him coming out of the closet, and a choice that he will make that will ruin his neutral position that he has in the sports world. We think that I'll be talking about why it disproportionately affects average players. But before I move on, a lot of rebuttals towards side government. The first thing that they wanted to tell us was that if this person is characterized as to be famous, it will help gain traction, all these truistic things. Firstly, that you have to prove to us why that will be successful in this player gaining traction and more people supporting him in the first place. But secondly, you can't quantify the effects. Like if Ronaldo comes out of the closet, maybe some people might still support him. But what about like an average player who is like less, or who's a weak player or from a weaker team who comes out of the closet? They isn't going to bring an impact to society at all. Second rebuttal, they told us that we can change the structure, we need to change the referees, we need to change the judges. So if the person that makes sports related, like a lot of sports related people like the judges and referees, like if they make a sports related error, so like if they give a red card and that person doesn't deserve a red card, or if he gives a goal and the goal line technology says that it wasn't a goal, all these things a lot of people will lobby for. Like the fans and the supporters will lobby that they need to fire that referee, or they need to do something about the referee. When it comes to an LGBT person or giving a red card to an LGBT person, who is going to lobby for this particular person? There is no traction that you're going to gain because you're messing with the structure of how that particular sports work. And even if your best case scenario that you will dismiss or fire this particular person, how are you gaining any more traction? You're firing famous and very influential people in sport because of a gay person. That will increase the hatred to this particular gay person, and the rest of the community will say that because of this person, I am now my career is ruined, and they are trying to mess with the sports of with the sports world and all these kind of things. But even if it can be implicit, like you can't judge when a person is doing it and when he is not. All these things you can't deal with, and the structure is always the same. Have a seat. The third thing that they told us was that it's not personal enough. Like straight people lobbying for gay people or gay rights isn't enough. Like we argue that if a straight person is lobbying for the LGBT community, the impact is higher than an LGBT person from the LGBT community lobbying for himself. Because those stories that he's going to tell the rest of the people, or giving him more airtime to tell about, like, you know, his background or whatsoever, we suggest that it will ruin his career. We are not willing to expand there. We are not willing to trade off that person's career
career in expense of him telling his stories or particular backgrounds about his his LGBT life and so on and so forth, because his ability to forward his career will be ruined. And we argue that the same impact will be given if a straight person is worth to argue for a person that is from the LGBT community, because those are the people that are not choosing to accept these people. The fourth and last rebuttal that I'll be talking about is that Divya wanted to characterize that this, love is very interesting and need to be, it's important that these people get their rights, and it's important to relate to other people and all these touristic things. We agree with you, but all those things come at the expense of you not forwarding your career. What is the benefit then? You will now become an average member of society that loses support from the fans that you would have had if you didn't tell people that you are a member of the LGBT community. The representation that you had before this, because you were a good sports player, now you only highlight the fact that he is gay or he is a member of the LGBT community, not how well he plays his football. All these things will be ruined, and this intrinsic love argument that you want to make will go back down the drain, because his talent wouldn't be valued anymore. Why it disproportionately affects average players? But before that, sure.
His sports is about winning, and that's what teams prioritize. You think that you just fire a really talented player just because they hate gay people?
See, that's a difference between hating or firing a gay player, but obviously those kind of things are not strategic decisions for a particular manager or particular group to make. But if the fans are not supporting that player, if the fans are not going to buy Nike anymore because he is the ambassador of Nike, then what is the point of him being a really good player? What is the point of him lobbying for good football at the end of the day? Because it will only apply for extremely good players, and which is going to be my substantive now. Why disproportionately affects average players? In the best case scenario, only best and really good, extremely good players who are really talented might not be affected by your policy. They might not lose that much support. We're talking about Messi, we're talking about Ronaldo, but definitely lesser fans and lesser supporters that they had than they would have had if they didn't tell people that they were from the LGBT community. That already as an entity is bad, because they lose some amount of supporters that would have contributed to the ticketing, could have contributed in buying the merchandise that these players would support, would propagate for. Anyway, but let's talk about average players, who are the people that are affected in this debate, who don't have any supporters already. You want to ruin their reputation of not being able to get any more supporters, because it's easy to say that people already know that these kind of good players already will play well. But for these players who haven't yet shown their talent, who haven't yet shown the rest of the world how much talent that they can give to the particular club, they will immediately shut them out, because the highlighted thing here is that they are LGBT. So the first thing that when people find out about this particular player, oh, he's LGBT, maybe he won't play that well. All these things will arise in the people's mind, and you can't control that, because all these things are very implicit. So you ruin the how sports works in itself. So you'll only be a elite group of players, who good players only being supported and only having some form of fans. You ruin the diversity that is in sports. Like, we need some weak players to come and to become better players later. All these opportunities that we'll have for a particular player or professional athlete will be ruined, because his talent, he has no avenue to channel his talent. Sure.
Are you saying it's better for athletes to remain in the closet where they cannot express their sexuality, where it affects them emotionally, and spiritually, and affects their performance on the field?
See, the only time where their performance on the field will be affected if there is a referee or there is fans that are booing him because he is LGBT. The only point where he remains neutral and doesn't tell anyone that he's LGBT and remains who he is as a player. So the only thing that he highlights to the rest of the world is that I am a player of Manchester United, not that I am a gay player of Manchester United, because some people might not want to hear that. He needs to remain neutral. He needs to remain in a strategic position to forward his career as a sportsman. All these things that you do will cloud and will mess the minds of the people. Think that why must we have structural reforms? Why must we change the system because of this particular LGBT player that is coming into the system and telling us that he's coming out now? All these things will bring more harm to the players and that you want to protect at the end of the day. So it will reduce the chances of him being named a good player. Like when it comes to like Ballon d'Or, when it comes to like specific award ceremonies, they won't even want to nominate him now because he isn't having that much fans anyway. So you highlight the fact that he's LGBT, not the fact that he's a good football player. We're very proud to oppose.
Mr. Speaker, I would now like to ask you all to imagine if you are right now a sports manager, if you have a team of all heterosexuals where everyone is heterosexual, or you have a team where there's at least one homosexual there, and the team that you have here, the heterosexual team, is a losing team where it's so clear that they lost, or a winning team where there is someone who's homosexual but they so clearly won. Who do you think the sports manager will fire or crucify? Now, inside government, inside opposition, they have tried to multiply or exaggerate the harms that will happen in our paradigm, which I am here and we are here to say that that will not happen even in the worst case scenario. Now, the two main harms that opposition tried to push in the government's paradigm is first that they will not be able to forward their career, that no one will bother fighting for the homosexual player, that if they really want something but the referee biasly put a red card against them or something, and they're saying that no supporters will side them, and the second harm would be that they will lose supporters, that no one is going to side them, and they're going to be pushed back into they'll be shunned by society basically. And they're saying that first of all, it's the false assumption to say that they will not be able to follow the career. Now, we can give you a few examples on how there are so many celebrities that have managed to further their career even more because they're homosexual. For example, Ellen DeGeneres. Do you still see, Ellen DeGeneres has one of the largest fan base in the world of entertainment. So why is it that they are claiming so outrageously that just because I come out and I say I'm homosexual, no one's going to side me anymore? I was going to be like, oh no, you're gay, I'm not going to see your show, I'm not going to watch your show anymore. And then opposition claimed to say that, sport and athlete people are different from the world of celebrities and entertainment, because in the athlete world, in the world of sport, it's basically a competition, that there is a judge, there is a referee, that someone is going to decide who loses and who wins, and there is a very high chance of biases. And we are saying that there is a very low probability of biases. Even if that happens, there is a certain check and balance mechanism that would prevent the judges from actually acting out on their biasness. Do you really think that if a homosexual player, let's say, kick the football into the goal, and the referee would say, red card or whatever, and they try to penalize that, do you really think that 100 million, thousands of supporters looking at the football match would go like, oh, he's gay, I'm not going to support him, even though he very clearly, rightly won the competition? Do you really think that the manager or the team that is on the side of the homosexual would just stand at the side and go, you know what, my team is gay, yeah, we really deserve that loss? Yes.
Yeah, so if whatever you're saying is true, why isn't it a norm for most athletes to come out? Why don't athletes recognize that even if they come out, their career isn't actually affected?
We are saying that in status quo right now, that in our paradigm, as it has been said by my Prime Minister, that there have been a few cases where people have come out. But the problem is that we, right now, as a homosexual professional player, we are here to tell you what are the benefits of coming out as a homosexual, unlike the paradigm. And second of all, they are trying to push a very unfair burden on the side of government by saying that, we are forcing these homosexual athletes to come out, and they have no obligation to side or to subscribe to the LGBT community, and they have a choice to protect their privacy. And we are saying we are standing right here, not as the state, not as a government, to implement this policy. We are just one homosexual professional athlete, and we are saying that, okay, fine, if other homosexual athletes don't want to come out, I'm fine with it. But I myself, I choose to come out because there are benefits of coming out, and we are here to tell you what are the benefits. Now, first of all, I would like to recharacterize what exactly do you mean by, in our mechanism, what exactly is a homosexual professional athlete. We are here right now, as has been explained by my PM, that we have a certain social mandate to fulfill to the society, and that it is not an obligation, it's not a legal obligation we have to come out, but in this social mandate, we are trying to change the world. We are trying to normalize the perception of homosexuality, just as Ellen DeGeneres and other famous celebrities have done, and that and as it has been shown by Emma Watson and many other celebrities on how they have managed to change the world and at least improve the perception of the cause that they're fighting for. We stand here and we are saying that we would like to achieve that same goal. And second of all, we would also like to point out the benefits towards the athlete themselves by in the aspect of their personal life, if they do get to come out into the society as a homosexual. Yes.
So the minute you consider that the sports industry will have to go through structural reforms in order to accept this LGBT community, you also consider that the sports industry isn't ready for the LGBT community. What do you say?
We are saying right now that yes, as it is in KYUEM, we are structured in a place that it is legally accepted for homosexuality to occur, to be revealed, but not socially accepted. But we are saying that I, as a homosexual professional, when we come out of the closet, we are here and we are able to normalize the idea of homosexuality. And why is that so? It's because we are such a large fan base that we have the limelight to show that we're normal, just like how Ellen Jenner show a PDA, public display of affection towards her wife, and how it is still accepted, it's regarded as cute and nice, and it gives people a chance to see that these are normal people in love, and what is so wrong about that. And in our paradigm, it is also beneficial to the athlete because, and this has been explained by my DPM, she has said that why exactly is it so wrong, so bad and so harmful to be a closeted homosexual person, regardless of whether you're a professional athlete or a celebrity. But since in this context we're talking about a professional athlete, I'm going to go on with that. So why is it so bad to be closeted? It's because we are unable to live the life that we want, to be true to our life, that every person deep down, we want to forge a meaningful relationship with someone. We want to find love. We want to be able to go back home and, face and live our life to our ripe old age with someone that we love. And we don't want to go around sneaking into a gay bar, having to pay the person that we had a one-night stand with, going like, please don't tell anyone I'm gay. Please, it's going to destroy my whole career. And we don't want to do the other professional athletes to this kind of life. We are saying that these are the benefits of coming out. Not only can we improve the society in their perception of homosexuality, we are also able to improve our own quality of life. With that, we are about to close.
You as a person do not have any obligation to fight for a cause just because you bear some resemblance to the meaning of that cause. You have a priority to protect yourself from the harms of the world. It is a very real and dangerous world out there for people who are homosexual. It is a very real and dangerous world out there for athletes who are homosexual, when their lives and their careers are dependent on insidious things like insidious discrimination, which otherwise can't be combated by anti-discrimination laws that they so wanted to fight for. I'm going to answer two questions in my speech today. Number one, do these athletes have an obligation to the cause, to the LGBT movement? This largely responds to the Prime Minister because his argument is about social mandate. But secondly, the more important part of this debate, what is the best interest of the athlete and why keeping himself quiet is in the best interest of his career and how he can succeed as an athlete? First question, do athletes have an obligation to the cause of the LGBT movement? Because the consent, let us analyze the consent of an individual, right? Because the consent of an individual is as such. You are an LGBT person, similar to how you are female, you never consented to be in the house. It is not harmful to be female or harmful for you to be gay. But just because you are in a specific position of being gay or being a woman, you don't have an obligation or duty to fight for the feminist movement's cause or the cause of the LGBT movement at a point in time. So you didn't choose it. It doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your career and yourself for that cause that could potentially hurt you at the end of the day. But the second question that under this issue is, does having larger influential power demand a duty to society? Because that's the contention that they make. Just because you are a public figure, just because you have some influence in society, you have a duty to society. By that logic, all Republicans who are gay, just because they have some political influence in society, should be outed as well. They should be telling people that they are gay, but they didn't want to respond and defend that part of their case. So it also means that it also has to be mandated for all public figures to participate in socially progressive policies. But we don't mandate all public figures to participate or fight for a cause, because we understand it's a personal decision. We don't mandate celebrities to fight for causes. We don't mandate celebrities to donate for charities to help fight against poverty, because even though it's good and even though it's correct to help people who are dying of hunger, we don't mandate it because it's a personal decision. Just because you have a influence doesn't mean you have an obligation or a duty to have that.
But next question, will it improve the fight against homophobia in general? Because is it justified to normalize being homosexual at the expense of harming your career at the very end of the day? Because Divya Karen told us that a homosexual person has a very specific and unique position that provides an extra benefit to the LGBT movement. Yeah, if you're an influential straight person, you will have the same influence into the LGBT movement. If I am straight and I am a celebrity and I come out and say I support the LGBT movement, the exact benefits that you get from a homosexual who is a celebrity is replicated into a straight person, because the part isn't that he's straight, the part is that he has influence, the part is that he has airtime, the part is that he can influence the hearts and minds of people. So you don't need a homosexual to go and fight for a cause, you just need a person who is influential to go and fight for the cause. But this debate is also about what is in the best interest of the athlete. So even in their very best case scenario where they do help the LGBTQ movement, the LGBT movement benefits the athlete at that point in time. Moving on to my second question. Before that, yeah, today.
Really, it's harmful for the athlete to just express his sexual desire, but hire gay hooker and pay them even more extra money so they can keep their mouth shut and increase in secrecy.
Okay, this was really offensive. But secondly, at this particular point in time, whatever he chooses to do with his personal life at that point in time should be within his personal life. Whether it was to tell people who is having a physical relationship is none of our business at the very end of the day. The speaker. Let's talk about the second question. What is the best interest of the athlete? Firstly, merit is no longer properly adjudicated by a person. This is different between other celebrities who depend on like fan base system versus an athlete who require a coach, you require a referee in order for you to win. There's a reason as to why this happens. So Divya told us that there's a check and balance. You know, if you see a person unfairly given a red card, there's a check and balance right there. First of all, discrimination isn't that obvious and oblivious. People are just oblivious to discrimination. If a person is homophobic and if he is the referee, he will obviously give a person to a red card just because he's gay by walking on the field, right? It happens in a more insidious manner. For example, coaches who drop average players just because they are gay. All they had to say was he wasn't good enough on the pitch, but that was never the reason. The reason was because the homosexual, because he's gay, he was dropped off the team because of his own self. But then she told us, oh no, it's okay because Ellen DeGeneres does it, and then therefore we should all do it at the end of the day. Ellen DeGeneres doesn't require a coach to be successful. Ellen DeGeneres doesn't require other people and depend on other people for the success of her career. She just needs to be herself at that particular point there, which is a specific difference between athletes and celebrities in today's debate. But talent is no longer adjudicated properly because Divya's POI was, oh, you know, would they fire a good player because winning is very important in the sporting world. But not all the best players are gay. There are average players out there who are also homosexual, who will not be able to given the chance to play just because they are homosexual at that point in time. So at the very best, you defend good players like Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo, okay? But these little guys who never ever get a chance will never ever get a chance under their side because homophobia is such a big problem. But then Nimalan's argument was also very important. Sit down. Nimalan's argument was also very important to this debate on how good players specifically get less damaging effects. So good players also get damaging effects. And what are the minimal damaging effects? So the fact that they are amazing at their sport and amazing at what they do, the amount of harm that they accrue is not as harmful and damaging as an average player because the overwhelming power that they have in society that they are amazing at their sport undermines that. But there's still a harm. So for example, if Cristiano Ronaldo goes up against Lionel Messi in the Ballon d'Or and it's head to head and it's very close between a particular person, the judges who adjudicate whether or not the person deserves the Ballon d'Or, you can't control what they think, you can't control how they adjudicate whether or not this particular person deserves a particular award at that point in time. It could be insidious for the very end. So if Ronaldo was gay, he may lose it out to a homosexual, homophobic individual who was just evil at that point in time. But the bigger part of this debate is about average players who never get the opportunity because they don't have the ability to present themselves in these circumstances because of serious discrimination that can't be protected. Sit down. The serious discrimination that can't be protected under their laws because no one can actually quantify how evil a person is under their model because it's insidious and you can't detect it. But the last thing that we also told you in today's debate. Firstly, we also told you that the scope of a player's career is immediately minimized, meaning a player can only now play in a place where there is like liberal laws to protect people against anti-discrimination law, or liberal places where you don't get shunned or discriminated just because you're gay. Meaning the point that if a player wants to play in some other place where there are a lot of homophobic people out there, he can't do that right now because he'll be shunned and discriminated under their model. But the last thing, and there are extreme cases in status quo, like in countries like Uganda or Nigeria, where they have very stringent and horrible laws against homosexuality. They call the bill Kill the Gays Bill. At the point in time, the very safety of these athletes in those nations will be harmed in a very large manner. Meaning at the point in time, not just the scope of the race is reduced,
athletes who are homosexual, who choose to out themselves under their model, will be harmed by their very own safety of walking on the roadside because they're an athlete who just so happen to be homosexual. We want people to progress, but if they want, it has to come at their own conscience and their own ability to make their own decision. They don't have a duty to fight for a cause just because they bear some resemblance. Side government started this debate by making it clear and trying to clarify that it's all about the player and not about any other external factors. But they went on to make a large portion of their case as to arguing why recognition of homosexuality is important, thus giving a truistic analysis as to why being a homosexual in an environment where you are accommodated for is important. A lot of these arguments are something that side opposition cannot deny and will not deny. What we will deny is that the fact is that they haven't been arguing for any part of this debate. They haven't proven to us on any level as to how this benefits an athlete, how this doesn't even damage the career of an athlete, perhaps. So I'm going to do these in my speech. One, I'm going to talk about what they talked about, the flaws of their case, why they couldn't necessarily win. But second, I'm going to look at what we talked about, why it was pivotal that they responded to it, and necessarily why, what omitting from responding to it, what are the harms of this, right? So what did side government do? One, they tried to make it clear that they were not forcing it. This was where they ran away from the debate. They weren't forcing, but they were doing every other thing in this debate. They were against people who weren't outing themselves. They made it a social mandate, which mandate means responsibility. As an individual who is gay, that would indirectly mean that you had to come out. They also made it crystal clear that the benefits that existed made this choice undeniable. So given all these things, we think it's a contradiction for them to hide behind the idea that we're not forcing athletes to come out. We're not forcing any individual within the circumstance to come out. Because if they were to say they weren't forcing athletes to come out, then their policy would be half as effective. Because a rational athlete who knew that his career was on the line would not side with side government's policy. So the only way the policy could come into effect is if they made it a mandate or they made it a legal obligation that this person did out himself, considering that the harms to his career have never been responded. But secondly, they consider the reforms are in order. We think this is particularly harmful. Why would you allow reforms to actually exist if homosexuals are going to be victimized by the system anyways? So this is an argument for fixing the system and then allowing homosexuals to come out. Because that was a contention that came from side opposition. The system is biased towards individuals who are heterosexual. The system needs to be corrected within status quo. We don't think it's fair for homosexuals within a system like this. So even they argue the reform in order, they need to prove why the reforms need to exist in the first place. This proves the arena isn't ready for homosexuals to be a part of. But the loss of supporters argument, right? So they consider that a loss of supporters that exists, and move further than this, they even consider our best case and our worst case scenario. They consider when they are talking about good players, they will lose some supporters. They consider when these are average players, they will lose all the supporters that they've already had. So we don't see what side government is fighting for in today's debate. The only thing that they talked about and how it was beneficial for an athlete was because it was morally right. And we don't think that this is fair because being morally right doesn't get an athlete anywhere in this world. It doesn't get an athlete up the social ladder. It doesn't get an athlete any further in his career. Even if an athlete were to choose this, which most athletes won't, then athletes already suffer from a severe loss within today's debate. So what did we talk about? One, I talked to you about the obligation. This argument mainly centered on proving why any individual in society should be able to make a choice based on his outcome as to whether you want to support the LGBT movement. This argument was important and they should have responded to it because it directly takes up the Prime Minister's entire speech. The Prime Minister spent a lot of time telling us why it's a social mandate, and we don't think it's a social mandate. We think people who choose to come out and support the cause have done. It hasn't become a social mandate, it has become a choice for every individual in society. So we don't think that mandate exists. But secondly, we talked about how it harms the career of every athlete. We told you very different, a very specific analysis that was also extended by Deputy Leader of Opposition's argument. How these individuals will be part of insidious discrimination, which they can't counter, just to be clear. But secondly, it also makes it harder for average players to make a mark in the world of football or in the world of sports players. All these things proves why it is not in line in an athlete's vision to take this choice. It is not good for an athlete to take this choice. So we think that considering all of this, right? We think that all the methods that they try to achieve, when they try to run this debate, we have proven to you how we achieve their methods better. If you want to talk about giving homosexuals rights, we can do it to others. We can do it to campaigns. These footballers or these sportsmen can also support homosexuality by using a different identity. So their cause can be achieved under both sides, but our cause can only be achieved under ours.
Yeah.
side opposition also wanted to solve the problem of oppression or stigmatization that gay people face as of now. And they were principally okay, and they recognized that there needs to be something done, but they just said they want other methods, campaigns. So given your side government was able to prove to you that this is the best method of solving the issue, then we think we take this debate. But firstly, but the first thing that we have to answer in this debate was that they kept on saying they don't have an obligation towards doing it. If they don't want to do it, they shouldn't. We don't agree with that, Mr. Speaker. We came out from get-go and told you that it wasn't a forcing debate, Mr. Speaker, but it was about which choice would make a better benefit and which choice would benefit not only the athlete but society. That's what this debate was about, Mr. Speaker. They kept on wanting to change the motion. Sorry, the motion wasn't worded in the way we wanted it to be. But secondly, right, on the idea on how they talked about the only idea that the idea that we brought about was that sports was about talent, and that's why we see that people value these athletes. They're different from normal individuals that are not necessarily valued in the degree that these people are valued, the professional athletes. And we think the first and foremost, they're valued for their talent, and that's why people attach themselves towards them. That's why they idolize them for their talent and then for their personality. We think, will backlash necessarily happen in the degree that they wanted to point out? Will people now not support Manchester United, who's winning every match just because, oh, one person's gay? We don't necessarily think the logical link came from their side. Given that sport is about talent and it's about winning, we don't necessarily think the type of characterization of the backlash that will happen is in that degree is really probable. But secondly, will merit be forgone? Because they talked about how coaches would fire their, they talked about how referees would be unfair. We told you there's already check and balances. If it's not enough, we should increase the diversity of coaches. I mean, referees that or people that look upon the match and find out whether or not this referee was fair or not. But secondly, on how he talked about how coaches fire these people. But suddenly, third speaker, he said that, oh, if this player is really good, then maybe he might not get fired. So we think that there's a principal concession that you value the coaches will be more likely to value talent over sexuality to a certain extent. They really concede to it. But even if you want to talk about people who are not as talented as certain individuals, we think first of all, this motion says that it's a professional athlete. So to a certain extent, you have somewhat a talent that's valued. And if you were chosen to be a professional athlete, we don't think coaches are going to forgo all the training they gave you, all the matches they put you through, just because, oh, I hate you. We think the balance of probability isn't one that they wanted, isn't a reality that they wanted to pay. But secondly, they kept on asking, what's the benefit to the athlete? Even though we gave you a variety of benefit, but we told you, first of all, it's more than the benefit, the personal benefit that this athlete might gain, which we talked to you about in first speaker from the get-go, on how we told you that this person will be able to express himself and express himself. But we think more than that was this debate about the utilitarian benefit, which there was no response from none of the speakers, even up to reply. We told you on how the lack of information and power asymmetry that exists in status quo. I spent extensively in my speech talking to you about the reason as to why, because they recognize that there's a problem with this status quo about people stigmatizing homosexuals, but he never, and I gave you analysis as to why it happens, because there's a power asymmetry. There's a reason why people are skeptical towards gay people, because they don't recognize and they fear them, and because of the rhetoric that these people, that religious people were able to preach and conservative people were allowed to preach, it's under their side that there's only one mentality that is preached. It's our side that's able to, and it's our side that's able to normalize this idea. And he said that, oh look, a normal person could still support, a straight person could support. We told you it's inherently different, because it's a third person coming out and he doesn't necessarily have the personal attachment towards what it's like to be gay, how it's not necessarily different from any other person. And there was no response towards how you could change personal lives of people, how you could and under their side is when they reaffirm insecurities of gay people, outed or not outed in status quo, of normal individuals. When you reaffirm insecurities because they have no one to relate to that's normal, or there's no one to relate to that's famous, that tells them it's okay to be gay, you're still the same person just because you love another man.
Podcast.